That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, we're a few minutes in. I'd say, let's definitely get this ball rolling. Welcome,
Cool.
everybody, all 100 plus of you. I'm really excited for this specific webinar. Benji and Devesh, the founders of Grow and Convert, I've known them forever at this point. I remember actively pitching Benji, actually, on Clearscope years ago. And Benji was pretty on board with the concept, but Devesh over here was like, no, let me, he was skeptical, right? He was like, let me just grill the crap out of Bernard. And he did. And I was like,
what is this? I actually think we still have that recording somewhere. If I can find it, maybe.
Wait, is that real or is he just pulling my leg?
No, I'm pretty
sure it's real.
I mean, anytime we're spending money on software, we're definitely in the grilling mode.
Yeah, you were all skeptic, and I was like, look, the proof is in your pudding. Just try it. Like, if it doesn't work out, I swear I would say, like, I'd refund you your money and whatever. And so I'm glad it's worked out.
It has worked out, and we've kind of built the whole process around it.
Yeah, well, Grow and Convert is a fully done for you content marketing service focused on ROI, driving actual leads and revenue. They've done it time and time again for some of the most competitive keywords across multiple industries. And today we get to see what the insides of their process look like. And again, it is a very robust process. It works. And I'll pass it over to Benji and Devesh here.
Cool. Thanks, Bernard. So today we're going to be speaking about SEO content writing, how to produce content that ranks for the keywords that you're trying to target. And I just want to thank everyone for joining. So this is probably the most common thing that we hear, which is ranking is difficult. And it's the reason that holds many people back from just even investing or starting in SEO. And then other common objections that we typically hear: our domain authority is too low to start on SEO. I can't compete with the big competitors. I don't have enough budget to compete. Or why would I invest in SEO when I can invest in paid, because SEO is going to take years to get rankings. And
before you move
Sure.
on, I want to just up level. I think behind a lot of these is this obsession with link building, and because you look at that number one top left, our DA is too low. What does that mean? It means, oh, we don't have enough links. I can't compete with the big guys also means we don't have enough links. I don't have budget to compete. Yeah, kind of all those first three, actually all four. We've noticed a lot of companies are just yeah, but links, yeah, but backlinks, yeah, but backlinks, as though that's the end all be all. And as we're going to explain, that is not our experience. Go ahead, Benji.
Yeah, and I would say we started our agency with kind of the same hesitation. So historically with our own agency, we didn't start out being an SEO agency. And the reason we shifted was just because the compounding results of SEO are what gets you the compounding results on the conversion side. And so we completely switched our agency to a more SEO focused agency about a year in. But basically through our learnings, we realized that you can rank for the keywords just by having a better strategy than a lot of your competitors. And that's the key thing that we're going to go into here. And what we've found specifically is, and the reason we're presenting on this topic is, from our experience, about 80% of the results come from this process that we're going to teach on SEO content writing. And then the other 20% comes from the more technical stuff. So the technical audits and fixing a lot of the technical stuff, and then also the link building as well. So we're going to cover two things: what you write about, which will actually be pretty short, and then two, how you write it. And so what you write about, we coined this concept, 2 years ago now, called Pain Point SEO. But the concept behind it is that most people, when they think about SEO, they're thinking about going after head keyword terms. So the example of our agency would be us targeting the keyword content marketing. But as opposed to Pain Point SEO says, go after the keywords that indicate someone is looking for whatever you sell. So the better keyword for us to target would be content marketing agency, because it indicates that someone is trying to buy or trying to work with an agency, as opposed to content marketing, which is just kind of a definitional keyword. And we've just found that most people, when they think about SEO, they're coming up with a keyword list of a bunch of different keywords in their category, and typically going after the ones with the highest search volume first, thinking that if we can get a lot of traffic to our site, we can optimize for conversion later. But through all of our experience, we've actually found the opposite to be true, where the highest converting blog posts all come from going after the right topics, which have this high search intent.
Let me
Anything out there, Devesh?
Yeah, so let me give some examples. Like, I think that this funnel is key to this, is that a lot of marketers just think in terms of this like buyer's funnel: awareness, consideration phase, conversion. And what we've noticed is that top arrow is just, I don't know, instinct, inertia, following the crowd, is that everyone thinks content marketing, we're starting at the top. And there's this thing kind of, you know, proselytized by these like marketing automation tools like HubSpot, because their software helps do this, of like, no, your content is meant to be awareness stage. So that's why you see companies be like, ultimate guide to HR, this and that, you know, like 10 tips on IT, blah, blah, blah. And that's all awareness stage stuff, because if you ask them, who's your ideal customer? They're like, oh, someone who's director of HR. You're like, director of HR doesn't need your ebook on some basic tips on HR. That's all like top of the funnel, the ultimate guide, the ebook. And then that school of thought is like, then you drip them. You get their email, you drip them, and slowly you can get them to consider, and then you can get them to convert eventually. And what we found is the vast majority of businesses have keywords that would be considered at the bottom of that funnel. Keywords like, you know, best small business accounting software, best blah, blah, blah payroll software, to continue my HR hypothetical example. Those kind of keywords indicate that person is not at awareness stage. They're somewhere in the bottom. And I honestly think it doesn't make sense to overanalyze whether it's consideration or conversion. I think this is all just like marketers overthinking this. But the fact that they're Googling best this software means you don't need to drip them anything. They don't need to be dripped. They're literally looking to start a trial. And so our philosophy is not that you don't ever do top of the funnel. It's if you have not exhausted and ranked for your product or company's bottom of the funnel keywords that indicate they're ready to buy, start a trial, talk to a salesperson, get a demo, or whatever, then what are you doing? You should get that first, because that's the lowest hanging fruit, and then work your way up. And Benji, continue. We'll get into the details of that.
We got a couple of questions before we continue. Anonymous people are asking, so what happens when high intent keywords are also really high volume and competitive? Something like best accounting software for small businesses, as an example. What do you think?
I would still go after them. So
we still go after them.
That would all have to do with just how you prioritize the keywords once you identify which ones are valuable for you to go after. And so there's a whole spectrum. There's the high intent and high volume, which we would prioritize first, because if you can optimize for volume and it has a high conversion rate, those are going to be really valuable for you to own. And then there's the other spectrum, which is high intent, but either shows no volume or very minimal volume in any keyword tool. And actually, that's a perfect segue into this slide, because this kind of just shows real metrics around this exact issue. So,
well, we don't want to scare everyone off with the numbers, so I'll kind of simplify like this. This is just stats. On the left, you see kind of the users column. So it's one of the GA metrics for traffic. On the right, you see new user signups. This is a SaaS company where it's like a free trial signup. So if you look at the 3 pink boxes, that's keywords that get this like high intent conversion thing correct. And look at those signups on the far right, 41, 33, 51, versus if you don't quite hit that, it's just a trickle. So that first lesson is this is a big deal. Like, we're not talking about, oh, if you go bottom of the funnel, you get 25% more conversions. I mean, this is like 10x or more. I mean, multiple of the ones that didn't hit are like 0 conversions, meaning you spent all that time to get blog posts, it's getting thousands of visitors and 0 free trial starts. That's not like a good use of company resources. Then, even within the 3 boxes, that first one has 10,000 users, the bottom one 1,000 users in this time frame, and yet the bottom one has 51 signups versus 41, meaning, as Benji just said, even things that have low volume, we have stuff that we use Clearscope for keyword research. The Clearscope or any SEO tool, it'll say like volume NA, 0 to 10, all that stuff you saw. And we're like, if this is really high intent and we think this is what, a bottom of the funnel prospect would search for, we go after it.
That last one specifically, when we did the keyword research on that, it showed 0 volume in any tool. Yet, one, there is traffic going to that blog post, as you can see over this time frame. I believe it's 8 months. And it also converts at 4.3%, which is higher than any other blog post on the site, and produce more conversions, which just proves that it's worth it to go after these, even if it shows that there's no volume in any search tool. And one way that you can kind of figure out if there are people searching for this and it doesn't show any volume in, let's say, Clearscope or any other tool, is you could go into Google suggested search and start typing the keyword or phrase or question and see if it auto-completes. And if it auto-completes, there's often people searching for this, but there might not be enough volume for it to register in any tool.
Awesome.
Anything to add there?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, there are some questions, but you've basically been ninjaing them as they come. So one of them is, what do you do when you've narrowed down a strong pain point with commercial potential, but there isn't a clear keyword behind it? So it's exactly what you're saying, right? Something's 0 NA, but it doesn't matter. Go after them because they're high converting. Now, I would say there's a couple of things that are popping up that are kind of interesting. One specifically around this idea that is also in this screenshot, but it's more of a philosophical question, right? Once you're already getting leads via the bottom of the funnel keywords, why should you try to rank for the top of the funnel keywords?
I would just say, because you're going to end up exhausting them. And then so at some point, it makes more sense to flip from super conversion oriented to building brand awareness, building word of mouth, and really just getting your name out there as a way to build leads. But our argument is that if you're just starting in content marketing, let's say you're starting the blog from scratch, or you're just starting to invest, it makes more, in terms of being able to generate ROI for your business quickly, it makes more sense to exhaust every single variation of the bottom of the funnel keywords first, then go after the middle of the funnel. So one level up, and we'll give some examples of what these are in a second, and then move to the top of the funnel stuff. So if we were to own content marketing as a keyword, instead of, let's say, content marketing agency, it would probably be one of the last things that we were to go after, just because we've exhausted all of the higher intent keywords.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing the question. It's from Seema. Hi, Seema. Seema is part of our coursing community, so we know her. But amazing. I think there's an implication in the question of well, are you guys saying that top of the funnel is not going to generate any leads? And the answer is no. It's not the top of funnel generating no leads, right? If we ranked for content marketing or something, or if Clearscope ranked for SEO, that sounds so silly. But if you rank for SEO, I don't think it's going to be generating no business. Something will happen from it. It's just the level of effort versus, and the level of difficulty versus the reward. It doesn't make sense versus ranking for some super bottom of the funnel thing, best tool for on-page optimization or something like that. All right.
Yeah, and that actually kind of ties into this as well. So we created this graph over the summer, where we analyzed where 20 different clients were ranking by how long they've been working with us, just to kind of see on average how long it took us to rank. So each of these blue dots is a different client. They could be different business models, so B2B. They could be different size companies. So some of these are startups versus large companies. But all that aside, what we found is that we're able to rank on the first page for, so this is looking at first page positions by length of engagement. So this graph is basically showing after month 5 or 6, we start to rank on the first page for a number of keywords. And I believe, Devesh, you said between 6 and 12 months, it's on average 30 different keywords that we're able to rank on the first page for.
Yeah, you can see it. So the bottom is months that we've been working with. Each blue dot is a client. Bottom is the months that we've been working with them. So in between 10 and 15 is 12, which is a year. So if you just look at roughly where 12 is likely to be and work your eye up the page to where the trend of the blue dots are, that's somewhere past 20, between 25 and 50. So it's somewhere in the 30s. And we produce for our clients 3 articles a month. That 3, and each one goes after at least one keyword, typically just one keyword. So it's something like, if you're doing that, almost all of them, or you're getting a same number of rankings roughly in a year that of the articles you produce. So you're producing 30 something. So the key lesson is a couple fold from this graph. The bigger one is there is a trend, meaning time matters, which I know for anyone doing SEO is probably like, yeah, duh. But this was an important graph for us to produce because we talked to a bunch of companies. Some of them are our clients. Some of them are talking to us to consider being our clients, right? Our sales conversations. For a lot of them, they come in being like, I'm trying to raise money by September. Can we get our organic, lead gen from 10 to 400? You're like, no, I can't, we can't do that. That's not SEO. Try a paid channel. And so that is the key thing, is the time matters. And then, yeah, there's subtleties of that's convenient for us as an agency. We can tell them the first few months, don't expect anything. But after a year, if you can say, identify 30 bottom of the funnel keywords that are high intent, high converting for your business, Grow and Convert can rank you for that. That's compelling. But that's aside for us. The takeaway for you guys is it takes time to do that. And if you flip to the next slide, Benji, it pairs well with this takeaway, which is we did the same thing. All of these blue dots are the same clients. We just switched that x-axis to, instead of time that they've worked with us, let's look at number of blog posts we're ranking on the first page versus their Ahrefs domain rating. And when you look at this, you see almost no trend. The combination of those two charts tells us, hey, if you just publish bottom of the funnel, or you publish these any articles properly with the writing process we're going to explain in the second half of this presentation, and you wait, things rank regardless of domain rating. So I want to make sure, and we have a whole article on this you can see on our blog, that I don't want to get the wrong impression that we think domain rating and backlinks doesn't matter. That's not true. We do link building for clients. It does help for sure. But by and large, the bigger trend is that time matters, and you need time to get on the first page, and that's regardless of domain rating.
Yeah, and I would just add, the reason why I personally think this is true is going back to what we said, where strategy can win. And so again, if you just think about what we're doing here, we're going after buying intent keywords. If most companies and other agencies are going after these really highly competitive head terms, and we're saying go after these high intent, less competitive terms, then again, there's less people competing for each of these keywords that we're going after.
And well, you're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, and by definition, terms that are closely related to your product means it's in your, topical authority is the SEO speak for that Google associates your brand with that. So again, you take Clearscope as an example. If Clearscope wanted to rank for some general marketing term, which it sounds nonsensical in this presentation, but a lot of companies do that. A lot of companies doing content for a company like Clearscope would be like, well, it's an SEO tool. Let's rank for content marketing strategies or something like that, or marketing strategy or something like that.
Or just link building or technical SEO or something.
Yeah, well, that is at least SEO related. I was thinking some companies do that where they would, come in as a content marketer for a company like Clearscope and be like, you know, we want to do like top marketing strategies of 2021. Like there's a lot of companies doing that, and Google's algorithm doesn't associate Clearscope necessarily as the absolute leader in the entire world of domains that they have at their disposal as like the leader in marketing strategies. But topical authority means if they do bottom of the funnel keywords, like, you know, top on-page optimization, AI driven like tools, I'm like giving something sort of illustratively nonsensical, then Google's like, yep, Clearscope is like intimately related to that. And so you can rank higher, even if your domain rating is 20, 30, 40 or whatever, you're writing on keywords that are intimately related to your product. And so Google's algorithm is smart enough to figure that out. We probably, from a time perspective, should keep it running. Okay.
I'll let you keep going here.
Yeah. So that was what to write about. And now we want to get into, so let's say you identify those bottom of the keywords. That's first topic. You can click again. So we just talked about this, right? So choose bottom of the keywords that actually have business value related to your product. Now, the rest of this presentation is what's our process for trying to rank for those? So let's go next. And so the first step, and Benji, I'll hand over to you here. Is SERP analysis. So we'll take this, or take over whatever you want, but I can walk through this TapClicks example.
Yeah, walk through this first, and then I'll show the examples after.
Yeah. Let's look at a particular client of ours. It's a client called TapClicks. We've had them for a long time. And for all intents and purposes, it's sort of enterprise marketing analytics and dashboarding software. And one of the things, so one of the bottom funnel keywords that we did go after, and we are ranking, and we'll show that in a second, is paid search dashboard. Okay, so it fulfills that first step. This is like product related. You're looking for a paid search dashboard. TapClicks is one of them. Now, the first step before we write is to analyze what is already ranking on page one for that keyword. If you have listened to anything that Bernard has said in any Clearscope thing, you know this, because Bernard touts this drum as well, and it works really well for us. So what that means is we go post by post across the first page. Now, our post happens to be ranking number 2. We're going to skip that and pretend like we haven't written this yet. So first we look at Dash This. It's a competitor. What is ranking here? It's like a landing page or a product page. It's not a blog post. So this is not comparing. What is it not doing? It's not comparing a bunch of paid search dashboards. It's not a tools post. It's just like, this is Dash This is paid search dashboard. Here it is. It's like a product landing page. If we keep going, there's another one. Data box number 4, also just like one of their on-page marketing pages. Get your free data box account is like a CTA. It's like a landing page or a product or solutions page. So what is that telling you? It's telling us that the search intent here is heavy, like product driven, meaning people searching are ready and willing to start a free trial or try a product. That's really interesting.
They're just looking for just a paid search dashboard.
Yeah.
So they're just looking for the physical product.
Another one on the page one is a little bit more informational. So there's a mix. So if we look at that, I don't know, 6th one down, this is more like a blog post discussing paid search dashboards. And I believe inside the dashboard blog post, they do discuss some options. So what we're learning from this is there's some kind of mixed intent, heavy product intent. People Googling this are looking to buy. And there's a little bit of information as well. And so what we ended up producing here in the second one in TapClicks is we did what Dash This and Databox did, which is we sold TapClicks. Like, and you look at the title, the paid search dashboard that scales across all clients. That is like the positioning of TapClicks' dashboard. You know, there's all these like features that give it scalability. So it's a whole blog post that's like detailing why TapClicks' dashboard is better, what it does really well, et cetera. But it is blog post format, and there's a little bit of discussion about like, what should you look for in a paid search dashboard? And so that all of this work of SERP analysis is that first step of really sitting down. And we have an actual step that writers use. We have a questionnaire, and there's like questions like, what are you seeing on the SERP? What should we do that's different? What are they doing well? And we spend a lot of time kind of understanding that. This is kind of a side example of if we were doing something kind of for ourselves, content marketing attribution, which we're ranking number 1 in this screenshot. in contrast to paid search dashboard, where there's a lot of like product buying intent, for a keyword like this, you're going to see a different, which is a lot of how-tos. So that second result is a guide, which in my personal opinion, what's the difference between a guide and a how-to? A guide just like a big thing that's telling people like advice on how to do something. But then like you look at that third one, marketing attribution model, how content influences buyers, how-to / like informational. Fourth one, content marketing attribution models, how to calculate your blah, 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 how to. Fifth one, how to measure. Like the last one, what is marketing and attribution and how do you report it? So this is a very like how-to informational. That's what we produced, and it's working, and it's ranking number 1, content marketing attribution, how to measure content at the top, from growandconvert.com. Go ahead, Benji.
All right, now I will switch windows here. So I just wanted to give 2 examples from clients as well, just to drive this point home. So when we first, this is a client called Geekbot. They have it's a Slack bot to help run daily stand-up meetings. But when we first looked at this query, Slack stand-up bot is exactly what they do, and they weren't ranking on the first page for this keyword. When we were analyzing the SERP, what we noticed was this is pre-us ranking. Obviously, Slack ranks because it's a branded search for them with an app directory so that you can find different Slack stand-up bots. And they had 2 listings here. And then previously, it was Trooper, Stand-Up Lee. It was a bunch of homepages that the homepages were optimized towards the Slack stand-up bot keyword. And so when we were trying to figure out what we should write for this, it kind of, if you look at this and it's an app directory for stand-up meetings, you can kind of back into the idea, and then a bunch of homepages, you can kind of back into the idea that people are looking to compare all the various products that do the same thing in this category. And so the angle that we ended up taking for this was, let's compare the 3 homepages that are on the first page here so that we can kind of give people an in-depth comparison of the different products and how they compare to each other, because we felt like that's what the search intent was telling us by looking at the search at the different search results here. So just wanted to share that example because people often look at this and would make the assumption that because there are other product pages, maybe I should just create a product page and try to get that to rank, versus creating a comparison of the different products that are ranking on the first page and giving people one place that they can go find all this information about all the different products. So that's one example. Another example is for another client, Rainforest QA, which is a QA product. But this is a little bit different because it's not super product related. I would say that this term is more middle of the funnel. But if we were just analyzing the search here, automation test coverage. So if we look at the different things that are ranking, so 10 ways to ramp up your test coverage. Here's more of like a definitional keyword. This is talking about metrics and their pros and cons. Here we go to how to increase your test coverage, top test coverage metrics. And then if we go all the way down to the bottom, this is something that I often like to look at when we're analyzing the SERP, is just like, what are some of the related searches on this topic? And so you'll see here, how will you increase test coverage, a test coverage formula, the metrics. But if you kind of just analyze the search and you're thinking, if I was the person searching for this, what am I trying to accomplish by searching this? If you just kind of look through the different blog posts and then the related searches, taking this angle of how to improve, if someone's searching for this, they're not typically looking for a definition. They're looking for how to improve this inside of their company or how to increase the performance. And so taking that angle of this blog post is why I think we are able to rank here. And so this is just, I wanted to drive home the importance of like looking at the SERP, seeing what else is already ranking, looking at these blog posts and just seeing what's written in there, and then using that as a way to back into what you should create for your own company. I will go back to this presentation and we can continue.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough like the importance of that second step. Like if we just kind of sit at this slide for a second if you just do that steps 1 and 2, and you kind of gloss over 3, 4, and 5, not to minimize the impact of Clearscope. Clearscope has been great. Is it like you're ahead of the game, because stuff, even if you like kind of write it in like not the great way, whatever, if you truly are picking like a topic that that like your product helps fulfill the intent, like someone's searching for like a solution to their problem, and then you've analyzed what's ranking carefully and done your best at being like, okay, I know what people are saying and I can really like try to fulfill the intent, even if you're not the best writer, or your writers you hire aren't the best, or whatever, and the length and all this technical stuff that people worry about, like you're in good shape. Plus, if you're on a Clearscope webinar, if on top of that you do Clearscope it, you are in great shape. So moving on, structuring, we only have this one slide on it because it's largely just taking what we did in step 2 SERP analysis and deciding what components of what you're seeing are going to be in your post. I mentioned that we have a questionnaire like that we do in our own process. And someone was asking about it in the chat, and I was talking about it there, but it's just sort of summarizing that and making a decision of like outlining your article. Like, so what are we going to do? So first of all, type. It's the top left box. Okay, we're going to write a list post because this is clearly what the intent is. Best blah, blah, blah tools or whatever. Then sections, what are we going to include? We'll have an intro. What we're going to do is talk about, some factors to consider or whatever in these tools. And then we're going to first present our products tool before. By the way, that is a pro tip. People who are reading blog posts, even those that will convert, the vast majority of them do not make it to the bottom. Think about how when you're researching something, do you really scroll to the bottom and read every word of every blog post, even if you're ready to buy a product? No, you're scrolling around. The vast majority of eyeballs and attention and clicks will happen at the top half of the blog post. Meaning, if we do a list post, best blah, blah, blah software or something like that, that commands a list post, a keyword that commands a list post, we will always put our client's product as the first long discussion. It does not mean we are force ranking them and making some claim like ours is the best, we're the number one. We don't rank anything. We just say, here, we're going to discuss 15 options on this, whatever. And we typically just are very forthright and say, starting with our own. And it just gives the reader this intention of like, this is what we do. This is what we know the best. So we're going to give an in-depth discussion of ours and then maybe mention some other competitors. And that means that the majority of people will only see that discussion because that's just how people read stuff. You're like, oh, I'm busy. I got to go do something. And like, that's what you saw. And then we think about uniqueness as well as that bottom left quadrant of, okay, this is what the SERP is saying, but what can we add to this discussion? Almost always in high converting bottom of the funnel type keywords, the product itself has some level of uniqueness. The founders, whoever, they built some features, they went to solve a problem. They said, oh, existing tools in this market don't do X, whatever. There is product uniqueness almost always, not always. And if there isn't, if it's truly non-differentiated, we just sell the value propositions anyways, like everybody's selling doorknobs. Yeah, but our doorknobs are also really great. Like we just don't discuss the comparison, but that's something important we always think about. And then all of this culminates in the bottom right quadrant, which is the intro, is we pay a lot of attention to the introduction, which is to try to summarize and position the piece. And that's a perfect segue into step 4, which is writing. Okay. So then when we're actually writing it, so we've structured it, we've outlined it, we've analyzed the SERP. The biggest thing that we do is we base all of our blog posts on interviews with product experts at the client organization. So if you're listening to this webinar and you're doing this for yourself, you're in good shape because you should, if it's for your own product, you should be a product expert. Otherwise, there's bigger problems or fish to fry, right? Or if you're working in-house, either you've been working at that company long enough that you just like know all this nuance, that's okay. Or maybe it makes sense to, oh, this specific topic I don't fully know on my company. I'm going to interview this product manager, or I'm going to interview that developer. Or I'm going to interview this like other person at the company that may know more. That adds to it. And here's why. Okay. So what I'm going to show is the opposite. What do most people do? Most people, they write Google research papers, most content, meaning they just look at what's already ranking and forget about outlining and all that we talked about. all they do is they just regurgitate that information like a high school or college paper, like what high schoolers do when they're writing a paper. They Google and they just regurgitate. And as an example, I Googled small business accounting tips in preparation for this webinar. And here's like 3 screenshots from 3 of the articles on page 1 where they have like their accounting tips. And Benji, if you click, let's look at the first one. The first tip of the first one says, keep business and personal finances separate, small business accounting tips. That's probably actually a very fair tip. The second one, separate business and personal expenses. The third one, keep your business and personal finances separate. And if we keep going, you can find multiple of these overlaps. Like that middle tier, if you go back, one was keep your receipts. Number 2, track every business expense, and etc. And here it's like prepare a budget, create a financial projection, budget for tax. So you just see this, and this is kind of like meant kind of as a joke, but like it's actually not a joke. It's common. So if we continue,
well, I think it's important just to explain why that's the case. Why is it that most people are producing content like this? It's the process. So the way that most people produce content, instead of using subject matter experts for interviews inside of their organization, is that they give someone a keyword, and it's usually a freelance writer who doesn't have a background in whatever they're writing about. And even if they do have a background, they often don't have the same opinions as the company on whatever topic it is. And so they're not sharing the company's opinion on this, and or how you get to a Google research paper, because most of these freelancers are just reading the top results and then basically spinning the words of them. And that's why 3 of the top posts on the subject end up with the same best practices. It's not because these are the best practices. It's because someone wrote this blog post and then 2 other people likely copied the exact same tips.
Yeah, and Jamie asks, isn't that dancing around plagiarism? I think so. That's why we recommend not doing it. So our solution to that instead is, now, mind you, Jamie, that, and anyone who's wondering about that, is you could say, well, didn't you guys say analyze what's on the SERP as well? Yes, but we mean from an intent perspective, like bigger picture questions, like should it be a list post? Are they looking for a list of tools? Are they looking for how to, etc. Right? Like what are their questions around this topic? But yes, the Google research paper, which is just like, I don't know anything, so I'm going to Google, and then I'm asked to like write about this, so I'm just going to write what I learned. I think that kind of is dancing around it. So our solution to this is what I mentioned, is interviewing product or subject matter experts for every single piece. 99.99% of the time we do this, actually now 100% of the time, we do this with product experts inside the client's organization. We used to, in years past, interview like outside client experts, but when we're doing bottom of the funnel pieces, that means by definition that it's around the product. So you need like product expertise, and some random outside expert is not going to be able to sell the client's product. So it needs to be someone inside. So a good example of that is for a particular client that has this video software, Vocal Video. We ranked for testimonial video script, or we went after that. Oh, good. We're ranking number 1, so it's not embarrassing. Testimonial video script. And we noticed that a lot of people were just giving examples like, oh, when you're recording a testimonial video, like here are some examples, like here are some actual videos, just click play and like see what they're saying. And here are some questions and testimonials and some scripts. So like hand this to your customer and have them read this for your testimonial video. And when we talked to the client was like, we don't think testimonials should be scripted. And so we went with it and we did this contrarian approach. And so you can see on the right-hand side that our result, which apparently is working at number 1, the whole positioning of the piece is throw away your testimonial video script and use this process instead. And I believe, Benji, if you scroll 1 slide over, yeah. So like in here, we have our steps at the top. Number 1, starting with broad questions to maintain authenticity. So just give them broad questions, request some specifics, ask for anecdotes, and then like, record it or whatever. And so we get into the details of that. If you continue on, we do give a lot of specifics in there. We have at the top half cut off there, you see like actual questions that you would ask them. We talk about the templates that are inside the product. So we find ways to sell the product and bring the product into it so it can convert. And that's fulfilling search intent enough for Google to keep us in the number 1 spot. And that's the power of writing via product expertise. It can be yours. A lot of you guys may be like solopreneurs or whatever, then you're in good shape. Then you ask yourself, what stance do we have as a company? Do I have as a consultant or whatever you're doing content for on this topic? If you're doing this for clients or for your employer, then you either consider yourself an expert or interview. It doesn't have to be long. Just, hey, I'm writing this blog post. Can I get like 15 minutes? I'm going to record this. And I want to ask some really specific questions about how we play into this space and what our stance is here. And that's the bulk of the process. And the last step after all of that is we Clearscope. And Clearscope has worked really well for us, but I just want to kind of zoom out, and Benji, you can give your thoughts on this. Like, and we discussed, sure. we talked, as Bernard said, we talked to Bernard, somewhat regularly, and we've discussed this with him before, is like, I think a lot of people use and think about SEO and on-page SEO via tools like Clearscope as like this shortcut, like I want to rank for this thing. Clearscope says include these keywords, just like you just give it to a writer and just like, put these keywords in here. And they think that it's this game where Google's algorithm, all it's looking for is like a checklist of keywords or something like that. And our experience is that's not true. And that Google's been around for a long time. Their algorithm is extremely advanced and smart. And it does take into account, Bernard, you know more about this technical stuff than we do, so you can chime in. But my understanding is they have publicly acknowledged it takes into account user engagement or behavior signals, meaning Google is watching like when someone clicks from Google into this blog post, what do? Do they stay and read it, or do they bounce back to the SERP and click on something else? Obviously, staying and reading it is good. It's good for Google because for them, they want to be a search engine that's fulfilling search intent. It's worth, billions and billions of dollars to them to own that space. Versus if they're serving your article and then someone clicks to it and then clicks right back to the SERP, that's not good for them. They're going to slowly move you down, and they're testing those spots. And so actually fulfilling user intent, actually giving them what they want, not just, checking some boxes on keywords or whatever is important. That's everything we've talked about up to now. And then at the end, Clearscope has been extremely impactful. We Clearscope it, we run it through, and we tend to not push so hard to like make the insertion of these keywords seem unnatural. There are times where we're writing an article on X, we've written it. We always have written it, and then we Clearscope afterwards. And if we can get to an A- or whatever, and the writer or whatever is like, I can't figure out how to use the rest of these in a natural way, we say, that's okay. And I don't have the data at hand, but just the amount of pieces we produce for clients, Benji, I'm sure there are many keywords that are not like an A+ on Clearscope that we're ranking in the top 2 spots for.
But I think if you start with this process of analyzing the SERP and writing from the lens of what is the person trying to accomplish, that's also how Clearscope is created. It's analyzing the top 10 or 30 results, and those keywords are taken from the top blog posts and the topics that they think are important to cover. And so again, if you're using this whole process of analyzing the SERP and then writing based on subject matter expertise, by the time you get to the Clearscoping process, you should have a lot of the keywords already in there, or it should be very easy to include them, as opposed to the opposite approach where you're starting from just looking at the keywords, or you're just trying to keyword stuff in there. And so I think it's a lot easier to use Clearscope when you have this process at the beginning. I think that's it. Should we get to questions?
Yes, we have lots and lots of questions. At a broad high level, I think I can split these questions into 3 distinct buckets.
Cool.
Bucket number 1 is where I'm going to start because that's kind of what people have been asking about. It's probably kind of half answered as you've gone on because these were earlier questions, but Sharon asks, wouldn't high intent keywords also have a high difficulty? I'm gonna tack that on with Anonymous asking, if high intent keywords are more competitive, does it make sense to pursue less competitive keywords first, regardless of intent? And does growing more rankings equate to more authority over the long run?
I'll answer the last one first. Yes, we have noticed that the more that you write on a topic, the easier it becomes to rank over time. So one thing that we've noticed is in that first 5 or so months, especially if the client hasn't been blogging consistently previously, sometimes it may take a while for Google to index our blog posts or the blog post to start ranking at all, just because we're just starting to build that topical authority. And then the more that we're blogging on a specific topic, so let's say we hadn't been blogging on content marketing before and we just started, but now for a period of months, all of our topics are around content marketing, then going forward after that 6 months, it should be much easier for us to rank on the content marketing topic. So that's the last question. Then going to the second two, we tend to not take keyword difficulty in any tool into consideration too much. It's actually not even something that we look at when we're going after a keyword. If we analyze the keyword well, so if we do that SERP analysis and we think that we have something unique to say on the topic and we can take a unique angle that maybe no one else is taking, then we typically think that we can beat out most of the results on the SERP, regardless of how competitive it is and regardless of how strong the domain authority is. One example of that, just from a client that we thought was pretty much impossible to rank for, we have a concussion treatment center that we do work with, and a lot of the results that we were competing against were WebMD, Healthline, and so you're thinking their entire business is health content. And so when we were going after some of these keywords, we didn't even think we would have a chance of competing against them. But by taking the expertise of this client's organization and then providing a new opinion that hasn't really been stated before on some of these topics, we outranked them in number 1, 2 spots, beating these large content sites. And so again, I just want to drive home the point that to us, this the intent of the keyword and making sure that you match that intent is more important than a lot of the other metrics like keyword difficulty.
Well said, well said. Here's a shout out from Omid. He says, these guys are the real deal. I took their top 1% content marketer course almost 3 years ago, grew my company's organic traffic by 700%. Wow. It's also then an answer to a question that Vincent asks, can you share the questionnaire you give your writers? Well, it's in their course. And you can see here live testimonial from Omid, lots of the folks from their course here live on the call. Go check it out, right? I think that there's a lot that these guys have done. So many new terms like Pain Point SEO and Google research paper. I love just this whole conceptual coining and strategy that they put together. So definitely go check it out. I'd say it's worth the money. You can see here, everyone. You can't see some of them because they're just coming to us, but they're the best, mirage content, all this good stuff. All right, there's now this other bucket of questions that have been coming in, and this is around this newer idea of AI writing tools. Sharon asks, what about using tools like outranking.ai? Checked it out while you guys were talking. It's like an AI kind of scrapes what competitors are doing, uses GPT-3 or some natural language generation to suggest headings, titles, descriptions. What are your thoughts on that? And I'm going to merge that with a follow-up question that Brandon asks. What are your thoughts on the evolution of AI produced content? They are being integrated into these AI softwares like Jarvis or Jasper with Surfer. People can produce optimized content at an insanely fast rate now. Wouldn't backlinks become more important now? And
we just had a 15-minute conversation about this exact topic yesterday. So Yeah, my personal opinion is I think that they oversell what they do. And I don't think that they'll be able to match a human just because of everything we just talked about. So if we're saying it's important to have uniqueness in your article, it's important to position your product in your article, it's important to come up with the unique angle of your article. And then you're using AI to basically analyze the SERP and then regurgitate what everyone else has written. Then wouldn't that just be a Google research paper done by AI instead of humans? It doesn't accomplish everything that you're trying to do. And so even if you're able to rank for the keyword with one of these tools, and I'm not saying it's impossible, it might work, but then you're not selling your product, you're not having your company's expertise in your blog posts, and there's other reasons why the content might not work for your business or generate conversions. And so again, I think one of the main problems in all of SEO when companies are trying to invest in it is they try to take shortcuts instead of just putting in the work to achieve the results. And I think AI is just another example of companies thinking, oh, I can use this tool and it'll take me 15 minutes instead of taking 8 hours to write a blog post that actually has our opinion and expertise in there. And so sure, it'll get better over time, but if you just think about how these tools are created, it's taking a bunch of data and then using that data to then, give you something back. And so by using something, you're just not going to get a unique blog post. And I don't think it's going to work long term. So I think, yes, it may work in the short term. Yes, you may have some results ranking. Do I think you're probably going to get to the top 3 positions using this? Probably not. And even so, I don't think it's going to really help you from a conversion perspective.
No, we can keep going through. There's a bunch of questions. I was going to answer some more. Please. There was Lori Berger asked, can you address about the optimal length of blog posts? There's a lot of buzz about not needing long posts of 2,000 plus words to rank, but trying to achieve an A++ grade in Clearscope ends up lengthening articles. We actually don't measure word count. Sometimes when we're hiring new writers for our team, they're like, well, how many words, whatever. And we just kind of say like, roughly our posts tend to be between 1,500 and sometimes 3,500 words, but we don't measure it on a post by post basis. If you ask anyone on our team or me, like, how many words was the last article we published, we'd say, I don't know. Like, and so, yes, I think it tends to be 2,000 plus, but I wouldn't worry about it. I was just looking at a keyword. In fact, I might even have the tab open that we're going after, marketing ETL, that the first post, I'll share my screen. We're going after this for a particular client. And the very first post, I was analyzing this yesterday with a writer, is from a competitor of our client, AdVerity, and this is how long it is. This is the whole post. So I don't know how many keywords that is, but it's not 2,000, or words that is not 2,000. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. And then A++, like, I haven't found that to get an A rating on Clearscope, you need to go 2,000 plus. A++ maybe, but like I said, we rarely get to A++. I think different writers and strategists on our team have different levels of Clearscope anal retentiveness. Some of them want to get to A+, some of them are like A-, Davis, too hard to go further, whatever. And we're like, yeah, cool, whatever. And that tends to work, like A-ish or whatever.
Bernard, correct me if I'm wrong, but a rating doesn't guarantee a result. And so it's just an indication of how likely you are to rank. Getting A++ doesn't mean your blog post is going to be number 1. Correct?
It's if the direction and the strategy of the post is on point, you could actually be like a C- and you can rank, right? That's why in some cases, if you are looking at a Clearscope report and you're looking at the competitors and you're like, why is the C- rank 3? it's usually one of two things. Number one, it could be backlinks, right? Like the site's just super authoritative. Number two is that it's servicing an interesting perspective or intent that you might like users are engaging with. So usually when we see that, when you're scanning competitors, it's always like a C- is like, okay, is this an authoritative website? And if it's not, then it's like you should probably pay attention to that, what that piece of content is saying, because that's an emerging perspective that people care about.
Bernard, I'm getting a question from one of our team members on our personal Slack who's watching the webinar, and I'm going to defer this to you because you know more about this than me, that he's saying that from what he's seen Google publicly say, that they're saying that they don't use metrics like dwell time or whatever, that they're measuring search intent by analyzing the text, not by user behavior. Do you know, can you comment on that, or do you have any other?
My understanding, and this is why you get personalized Google search results, is that they are sort of just following you around on the internet. And that's why you'll see your search results actually shift around based on what you've done in the past. So I believe it does signal, I mean, dwell time, I don't think they care about that. Dwell time is, in an SEO perspective, the amount of time somebody spends on a page. But theoretically speaking, that's just kind of like smoke and mirrors. Ultimately, what Google is, I think, looking for is the behavior that happens post-page. Obviously, if you spend a lot of time on the page, you could think of that as a leading indicator of the content on that page being good. However, right, if a bunch of people Google a result, spend a lot of time on rank number one, yet almost every single one of them go and click on rank number two and spend less time, but then disappear, right? Like the path of the searcher that Google is inspecting just ends at number two always. I would bet that you're gonna see number two rank above number one, even though the dwell time of number one might be like higher.
Okay, so even if it's not dwell time specifically, you're saying the algorithm is watching user behavior, clicking in and out of different results.
Yes, okay. Yes, that's my belief.
We've had a couple questions on promotion, so I think I'm going to combine a couple of them. One of them asked.
I just shared an article in the comments.
Yeah, I was trying to find the specific ones.
One was, how do we think about paid?
Yeah. How do you think about paid promotion? And the other was like, what do you do when you kickstart distribution? We do two types of promotion. So, you know, if we break it down into two types, one is SEO, which is everything we've talked about on this course. And as we said in some of those early graphs, we need to, there is some like waiting time for SEO. You know, sometimes you get lucky or the domain is appropriate and you just rank within like, you know, a day or something. That's very rare. Before that, we do paid promotion. We talked about on the blog. Benji posted an article in the chat apparently, and so there we do. We've tried many things and continue to test many things. We do paid social and paid search. Paid search makes a lot of sense. You're trying to go after keyword X before you actually rank for it organically. Can you see whether it makes sense from a cost perspective to try to get one of the paid spots for that keyword on Google? It can be very expensive, paid search, depending on the keyword you're going after. So there are many times where we're like, no, we can't do it. Or sometimes because we do some of this low volume keywords, sometimes Google ads just straight up won't serve our ad because it just decides that this is too low volume. And it says, well, we'll serve your ad if you combine it into this keyword group or campaign group or whatever that's going to show it on a bunch of other keywords. But we're producing articles that are so specific to a specific keyword, it actually doesn't make sense to do that and pay for ad clicks on auxiliary keywords, because then in some other keyword that's kind of somewhat related, our article doesn't make a lot of sense. So then we also do, we test a lot of paid social. For paid social though, we found the type of articles we're starting to find are not the same as search. So if you're trying to produce an article ranking for like best SEO tools or whatever, maybe that's not a good example because that actually might work on paid social. We're trying to produce something like this, you know, marketing ETL tools, some real niche-y like technical thing. most people, if they see that on like a Facebook, Twitter ad, they don't want to click on that. Like they're like, you know, are you looking at, or like we do a lot of versus keywords, this versus that, Clearscope versus SEMrush. Like that doesn't make sense when you're just like browsing Twitter. You're like, what? Like, why are we talking about these two things? Those are, a lot of our articles are for people, only make sense if someone's actively Googling that thing, you know? So for paid social, what we found and what we tend to do for clients is we just do non-SEO articles at the beginning of the engagement while we're waiting for the SEO rankings to come up that are opinionated, that are interesting. Articles like, if you're doing X, you're doing it wrong. You know, this is how we fix this. There's this problem in our industry and we created this software to fix it. Here's our founding story. Like things that are like genuinely interesting for anyone to read on their social feed. And those, if you get it right, can produce some conversions and all with at a decent cost off of, in particular, we've noticed paid Twitter, especially for like things in kind of that startup-y, techie audience. Twitter works really well. They're really active there. For a lot of our B2C companies, Facebook is an absolute godsend, paid Facebook ads. So the concussion clinic that Benji mentioned, we have a whole article case study on our site about that. For paid Facebook, for consumer-facing things, the costs are extremely low, less than $1, sometimes less than 25 cents a click, and they work extremely well. But for B2B, we found Twitter tends to work better. And in general, it's been a struggle getting SEO-focused or created posts to do well on paid social. We tend to like, we try it. You know, you get some clicks, you may not get a bunch of conversions. I'm talking about all this in the context of, is it converting? And we just wait for Google. And for Google, we do also some link building. We've talked about that, I think, in different places. What else? More questions?
Yes, always more questions. So it's just a stop slot of them.
We have time, so
yeah,
feel free to ask away.
There's two that's grouped together. How do various SERP features fit into SERP analysis, and how much time do you spend doing SERP analysis on Google page one for a keyword?
Sorry, what was the first half? How do you fit
features?
How do various SERP features fit into SERP analysis?
I'll give one example. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Does it mean your product's features?
No, like, you know how for certain queries it'll say like featured snippet,
or like a
map, what he's talking about.
A video carousel, a recent news. I think that's what SERP features refers to in this particular case.
You know, I would say we don't really take that into consideration too much. If we can optimize for it after the fact is when we've done it. And one example that I would have, although it's not really showing, but there is a point in time where someone was beating us for our own search term, Pain Point SEO. And I forget who I asked, but I asked someone on Twitter who worked at Google why that was. And it was just because he clearly provided the definition of what Pain Point SEO as like a separate call out. And so the call out was outranking us as a featured snippet. And he just said, go back into the article and just put a definitional term in there and it should re-register and outrank them. And it did work. And so I would say if you're being beat out by a featured snippet or some of those elements, go back and try to, the same thing that you're doing on the SERP analysis, go back and try to into the SERP and see why Google is pulling that phrase, like look at what has been done in the blog post, and then you can go update the blog post to try to replicate that for your own. I would say that's the easiest way, but I don't think, unless I'm wrong, Devesh, that we take that into consideration too much before we write.
I was trying to pull up my own example. Which feature are you talking about taking into consideration?
I was just saying a featured snippet.
Yeah, no, I mean, and then the other thing that I wanted to say, and I was trying to pull up is, Bernard, you were saying like all the other things, like there could be a video, there could be this and that. We sometimes I just look at that when I've seen videos, and I was trying to find this article I was working on, and I couldn't remember the keyword. I just look at the titles of the videos. Sometimes we've looked at the videos and do the same analysis as the written articles of being like, so what is the video teaching them? And what do they want there, and try to match that in search intent. The other thing I'll say is I've noticed in a lot of Bernard's like presentations and stuff, he's talking about a lot of keywords that we don't just our particular client base tends to skew away from. So a lot of these kind of like consumer facing how-tos, like I think Bernard, you use like recipes and stuff sometimes in your examples. We just don't have clients that are in that space that are doing like recipe blogs or whatever. A lot of it tends to skew like software, B2B, blah, blah, blah. Not all, like we said, we have consumer facing health type ones, but we in our normal day-to-day life, we just don't see a lot of those like SERPs that have a bunch of random, like I've seen sometimes, Bernard, you mentioned like you've shown some news examples or whatever. When you're doing some kind of query that's kind of current events based, yeah, the SERP looks very different, you know, versus what I was pulling up earlier, like marketing ETL is just like a bunch of blog posts and maybe the first one has a featured snippet or something like that.
Yeah, I guess to add on for the broader class of queries, I'd say looking at the SERPs does imply certain ideas, right? If you see a top stories, it implies that people care about what's happening with the topic now, which then implies that your content needs to be refreshed way more frequently to stay relevant over time. If you Google best credit cards, it's probably the best example of this. You'll see that top stories is, I think, like 6th on the list. The placement of where the featured snippet, or not featured snippet, where the SERP feature is also a very strong indication of how Google and users are valuing that particular module. So you can imagine if you Google the groceries, you get the map as number 1. Basically, Google says, you want grocery stores near you. And right, that's basically, we can infer that intent. When we see best credit cards and you see the top stories as like number 6, it infers that recency does matter, which is why you'll see all of the people ranking on number 1 being like best credit cards of February 2022. It's like, not that, but January or February. But they're basically saying, look, like you care about exactly what the best credit cards are now. And so that's like an important thing. I guess, right, since you don't deal with this as much, what are your thoughts if you saw, right, a video carousel? When do you say to the client, like, hey, like we need to have a video created, or, you know, like perhaps let's go fetch a YouTube video and embed it into like our piece of content? Do you do any of that?
Not really. We just stick to our core service. It's like we know what we do well and we stick to that. So we don't typically create videos or anything like that. If there is a readily accessible video that the company has already created on YouTube or something like that, we've definitely embedded those in the blog posts. But we're not typically creating video content just for the sake of trying to rank for something.
Awesome. All right, this one's an interesting one from Tom. When do you believe that you've exhausted a keyword? Like if you're ranking for a keyword on a few pages or posts, have I exhausted it? And should you stop writing content for that keyword when it's exhausted? What if those pages aren't bringing in conversions? It's a separate follow-up question. But like say you've attacked ETL from all different angles, like then what?
Then we would move on. But I would say so definition of exhausted, it would only be exhausted for us if we're already ranking in the top 1 to 3 positions. And if not, we're probably updating that blog post or trying to create a new blog post with a different angle to see if we can achieve those results. And so that's the definition of success for us, is when we're ranking in those top 3 positions. In terms of the exhausting like a category is where I'm guessing that you're going with this keyword, or sorry, with this question. We try to think of all the various synonym keywords, even if they're slightly different. So an example would be tools versus app. Why are they slightly different search intents? Because an app typically means mobile or something on your phone, whereas tool or software indicates more desktop. And so if you look at the SERPs side by side for those keywords for whatever product app or whatever product software, oftentimes the search results will be slightly different and require a slightly different intent. And so we would probably write blog posts to go after both of those intents, even though from a user's perspective, you might think, oh, that's the same thing. It means the same thing. But from a search perspective, it's not. And so what we do to back into that is we're looking at the search results and seeing how much overlap there is. If the same blog posts are showing up for the same synonym keywords, then it likely means that we don't need another blog post to go after that. However, if they're different enough, then we'll likely create a new blog post to go after that keyword. Hope that answered that question.
Yep. All right. Few more. Anonymous asks, when you include a new perspective subject matter expertise, does it make a difference to reflect this in the title versus inside the content?
I assume what you're meaning is like then having a blog post title like, we interviewed, you know, blah, blah, blah from this company. Like, you know, we interviewed Jane Johnson from, you know, Acme Corp or whatever, and this is what she said. So because we used to do that. So we used to do that for a client. We would say like, we interviewed this person from Drip or whatever.
VP of marketing.
Yeah, VP of marketing, whatever. But because of what I said, like we found those like general topical, like topic discussions or expertise from interviews, they didn't convert for our clients because it's just not related to our client's product. It's just like general advice on the topic or whatever. So we've stopped doing those. And who are we interviewing is we're interviewing either like the founder, a product person, or someone with product expertise on a particular topic. So that marketing ETL keyword that I was projecting is a particular like, you know, use or niche of that client, TapClicks. And so we interviewed someone who knows how TapClicks is positioned in that space. Similarly, we did one on like radio ad analytics. We had an interview last week, just comes to mind. And so we interviewed a product person. Then it doesn't make sense to mention them because it's an employee of the client's company. And so we just write the post, you know, as the client. So in that case, it's this company TapClicks, and we write the post as TapClicks and say, and you know, we use we. TapClicks is saying we. It's on the TapClicks blog. We think X. We've noticed people in radio ad analytics are looking for this, looking for that, and we don't mention the person. And I think that makes more sense because most people Googling that, like, look, the vast majority of people, no one knows. No one knows who we are. No one knows whatever. Like you mentioned in a blog post, vast majority of Googlers are like, what? I'm just trying to like answer some question. So.
But I will say, if you interpret that question slightly differently, that vocal video example would be a good example of a way to weave the expertise into the headline, where we interviewed someone and they had a unique opinion on the topic, where they said actually testimonial scripts aren't valuable, and so taking that angle in the article and the headline is one way to incorporate that expertise and the company's opinion in there. Instead of just saying we interviewed this person and here's their take, it's actually saying if you're searching on on this topic and you're trying to accomplish this thing, we actually don't think this thing's as valuable at all. Here's why. And so that's one way to incorporate that.
Yeah, I would add on to that and say that there are certain topics in the stage of how society is viewing the topic where specifically taking that approach actually drives the highest click-through rates and engagements. You could imagine that something becomes very trendy, like the keto diet. There will be a stage in the lifespan of the topic of most trendy diets where something like titled, we interviewed 20 medical experts and here's what they have to say about the keto diet, will do very well. And then, right, the more research will be done and it'll become a more fleshed out thing. So I think it's an interesting approach. You have to be, again, very well-versed in your subject matter, it's like expertise to understand why something like that will work and when to place it as, and call it a bet in your content like strategy.
This is a great question, Seema. I have so many opinions on this. Should thought leadership content focus on keywords? So one, thought leadership content to me is not about the topic at all. So thought leadership means that you have something interesting, unique, valuable to say on the topic that your industry peers don't. And so it's not a topic, it's what you have to say in the articles. And so if someone's saying, I want to produce thought leadership content, the first question I'd ask is like, well, what unique opinions do you have on this topic that are different than anyone else? So thought leadership belongs in the article itself. It's your arguments in the article. It's the examples. It's the way that you back up those arguments, but it has nothing to do with the keyword or topic itself, in my opinion. So yes, you can go after a topic. And so you could argue this is largely what we do on our site. So that example that we shared earlier, content marketing attribution, that's going after a keyword, but the thought leadership comes in the opinions on what everyone else is doing wrong with attribution and how we do it differently. And so I would say the thought leadership gets exercised in the arguments, in the introduction, in the blog post itself, rather than the keyword. And that applies to any keyword. And so this whole process is meant to get the thought leadership from our companies, because if we're interviewing someone, we're saying, here are the opinions of every other company on this topic. What does your product do that's unique, or why are they wrong? Then getting those answers from them is where the thought leadership will come through in the article.
Great answer. Great answer. There's a bunch of stuff where I'm still trying to wrap my head around these questions. I'm going to sum up Mark's question here with an idea that I think makes a lot of sense. So let's say you have an inventory of content and some of it ranks really well, but the problem that you're facing is that it's ranking well and it's not driving signups, leads, revenue for your business. How do you approach refreshing or sculpting the content to change the conversion rate of that content without displacing the potential ranking or traffic impacts to that piece of content?
We don't.
I would say that's super rare. That's
super rare, as in
I think
being able to refresh the content and increase conversion rate.
Yeah.
Before you answer this, what's not rare is this question. This, I would say, is the number one issue that prospects and sales conversations we have with companies come to us with. Well, maybe number two. Number one is we just don't even have traffic in the first place from our blog. But number two is we've done all this work in content marketing. It's not converting. You guys seem to claim you can have content that actually converts. Now, what's the problem? And go ahead, Benji.
I was going to say it's probably a function of your business not having product market fit. So that's one reason. So my question back would be, have you proven that you can generate leads or sales already through your website, through any other channel? So through paid, through cold emailing someone, sending them to your website.
I think the question is slightly different. Even if they have product market fit, or let's just assume it's different. Even if they have product market fit, Bernard's saying, what if you have a bunch of content that's not converting? How do I refresh that to make it convert? Our short answer is we think the conversion comes from the topic, which is the first 20% of our presentation today. And those slides is we don't think you can rank keywords. So I've actually done this before Grow and Convert, years before I met Benji, and I still have this on the side. I've done an A/B testing agency. One of them, we had a client that was selling like some time clock type software, and they were ranking for it was like to small business owners. They were ranking for like minimum wage keyword, or they were ranking for a few things, but there was a minimum wage keyword that was just like a really hot button political issue. It had like just a bajillion amounts of traffic to it, a ton of comments because a bunch of people were having like political fights about minimum wage on it. Like it just wasn't generating any conversions because it has nothing to do with buying punch clock software. So there's just nothing you can do. There's no refresh you can do to that. People are Googling minimum wage issues and they're landing on this. Those people are not looking to buy your software to like measure employee hours. There's nothing you can refresh in the content to fix that. And so our thing when we come in is you need to rank for keywords that actually show buying intent. And if you rank for a bunch of things, like another one, we had a Grow and Convert client early on, that had a survey-based tool, and he was ranking for this term Likert scale, which is an academic way to like ask survey questions to do whatever. And he was like getting like 30,000 visitors a month. He was like, look at all this blog traffic. We're like, that's not doing anything. Like it's like academics studying surveying techniques that are Googling Likert scale. They're not looking to buy your SurveyMonkey competitor. You know, they're not marketers.
Yeah, it goes back to the
nothing you
fundamental
can do
problem
to
that
refresh that. Like you can do your content upgrade, you can do your ebook download, you can add them to your email list. They're going to get on your email list. They're still not going to convert. And by the way, when I say all this, I'm not speaking in 1 and 0 binary. Maybe like a couple people will, but by and large, that traffic will not convert. You need to actually rank for things that the act of Googling that thing suggests they may be ready to be a customer of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, right, this is all for those who are watching the recording in a B2B sort of style, right? If you're an online media company and your whole business model is ads, yes, go after the higher level, like more informational stuff, because you make more money by serving more impressions, right?
I wouldn't say B2B. I would say the distinction is, are you an online media company, as you said, where your product is ads on page views? So you're monetizing the page views yourself, or are you a product business where the product or service, B2B or B2C, where you're selling something that's not the page views? You need to get those to then sell your product. And the latter, that means when that traffic is coming in, you need to understand the intent of that traffic. And if it's coming in for rando keywords that don't have product or service intent, like good luck. You can't just like put some pop-up or some like CRO thing to try to get that people to convert. They Googled something that suggests they're not ready. They don't want your product.
All right, one last question from Tom. It's kind of around this concept of thought leadership almost, right? Because if you're targeting key terms that report no traffic, which typically means that you're producing novel content around different perspectives, how reliable will the research on that key term be? How do you create well-optimized content in that case? I think we've stabbed a lot at this, but
you mean the SERP, you're saying because there's not a lot written on this topic that it would be difficult to analyze the SERP.
Right.
I don't think that's necessarily true. So sometimes there is other articles written on the topic. There's just not a lot of search volume showing up in the tools. So you can still analyze what the intent of the searcher is for those queries, despite there being no volume for them. And then I would say, yeah, if you're going after one of those terms that are low volume, it is probably because you have a strong opinion on this topic. And so you should come armed with some arguments or some things that you want to say before even getting into writing that.
Good answer. Yeah, I'd say unless you're literally coining a new term, which Benji and Devesh are very good at, like Pain Point SEO or Mirage content or that kind of thing, there'll usually be search results, right, that kind of talk about the topic that you're writing about. In essence, right, we could think about what we've just entirely discussed in this entire presentation, and we could synthesize it into a blog post that's like, keyword research is dead. Here's how to approach it instead, right? And nobody's looking for keyword research is dead. I mean, people are looking for how to do keyword research, but we can basically know that we can take this angle and it will probably rank by basically, deconstructing what we believe will be true 3 to 6 months from now. So oftentimes the best content focused people, specifically in SEO today, are the content strategists, right? They're the ones predicting a world 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road that is likely to be true. And when you do that and you do it well, then you start ranking for all kinds of different things that have no search volume for the topic that you're targeting. All right, well, that was a blast. It's always a great conversation when it comes to talking with both of you. Any concluding thoughts, questions, shout outs that either of you want to make or talk about?
I'll just share. I know there's a lot of people asking about process stuff. So we have a course that kind of just shares way more in-depth details of what we talked about here. It goes through those questionnaires, shares strategies on how to do this for B2B, B2C businesses. So kind of if you want more in-depth learnings, it's all shared in here, and it's all done in case study format where we take a business and then we go through analyzing the customer research. So we get on the phone with the clients and ask them the questions that we would ask on a kickoff call with one of our clients to determine, just to get all the fundamental information about the business so that we can then go and create that keyword strategy. And so if you're looking to kind of replicate the process that we use on our clients, this is a great resource. Otherwise, our blog shares a lot of really in-depth articles as well. And you can just go here and go through the new posts. And if you want some of that more in-depth answers on some of these questions, like measuring ROI or that graph that we showed on how long it takes to rank and more analysis on that, you can read here. Otherwise, on Twitter, we're pretty active sharing stuff. And so you can interact with us there. And I just wanted to thank all the 70 of you that stayed till the very end. Pretty impressive.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. This was super fun.
This was super fun. Super fun. I mean, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. You know, we host these Clearscope webinars. We'll also send out what Benji and Devesh were referring to, their articles, links out to the course. If you just want it done for you, again, reach out to these guys. They are the best. All right, y'all. Take care.
Thank you.